You know what's fascinating? While you're playing by the rules, trying to be honest and authentic, someone right now is reading your emotions like a children's book and using them against you. Here's the brutal truth nobody wants to admit. Studies show that people with dark triad personality traits, narcissism, Machiavellianism and psychopathy earn approximately 10–15% more than their ethical counterparts in corporate environments. They climb faster, they influence more easily, they win more often. And you're sitting there confused, wondering why that less qualified colleague got promoted. Why does that toxic person command so much respect? Why do you feel powerless in conversations that should be simple? The difference isn't intelligence. It's not work ethic. It's something far more dangerous. Something that Niccolo Machiavelli decoded 5 centuries ago. A psychological operating system that makes you absolutely immune to manipulation. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how the puppet masters think. So nobody can ever pull your strings again. Let me guess your reality. You've been in conversations where you knew something was off. Someone was twisting your words, reframing your intentions, making you defend positions you never took. And by the end, you felt smaller, questioned yourself, maybe even apologized for something you didn't do. Or maybe it's subtler than that. Maybe it's the coworker who takes credit for your ideas with such confidence that even you start doubting whether they were yours. The friend who somehow always gets you to change your plans, drop your boundaries, sacrifice your time. And you do it willingly, even enthusiastically. Here's what's really happening. You've been socially conditioned to be prey. From childhood, you were taught that being nice matters, that being reasonable is virtuous, that showing vulnerability is a strength. And all of those things, they're partially true, but they've left you psychologically defenseless in a world where certain people operate by entirely different rules. While you were learning empathy, they were learning leverage. While you were developing authenticity, they were mastering masks. While you were building trust, they were studying how to weaponize it. You're not losing because you're weak. You're losing because you're playing a completely different game than the people who control you. And until you understand their game, until you can see the board the way they see it, you'll remain a piece being moved around by invisible hands. The uncomfortable truth. Your honesty is being exploited. Your goodwill is being farmed. Your psychological transparency is being used as a weapon against you. But what if you could change that? Starting today, let me tell you about a man who was considered so dangerous that his name became an insult. Florence, Italy, 1513. Niccolo Machiavelli, former diplomat, political theorist and master observer of human nature, sits in exile, banned from the city he served. Stripped of power, watching from the shadows as lesser men wielded influence through manipulation and deception, and in that exile, he wrote something that would get him condemned by the church, despised by moralists, and secretly studied by every person who ever held real power, the prince. But here's what most people don't understand. Machiavelli wasn't teaching people how to manipulate. He was doing something far more subversive. He was exposing the game. He was pulling back the curtain on how power actually works, not how philosophers and priests said it should work, but how it does work in the blood and mud of reality. His critics called him evil. His readers? They called him honest, because Machiavelli understood something that most people never grasp. The world is full of predators who already use these psychological tactics. They just don't talk about them openly. They operate in the shadows, using your naivety as their weapon. Machiavelli's gift to humanity wasn't teaching manipulation, it was teaching defense. It was saying, here's how the game actually works. Here's how you're being controlled, and here's how to make yourself immune. For 500 years, people have read The Prince as a manual for tyrants, but the true readers? They understood it as psychological armor, as an inoculation against manipulation, as a way to see through the social theater that keeps most people powerless. Today, I'm going to distill Machiavelli's most ruthless insights into a psychological framework that will make you unmanipulable, not by becoming manipulative yourself, but by becoming psychologically sovereign, untouchable, clear-sighted in a world of illusions. This isn't about becoming a bad person. It's about refusing to remain a useful one to people who don't have your interests at heart. Let's begin. Principle 1. Master the art of strategic detachment. 445 Thank 40 Sime. Machiavelli wrote, "The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him." Here's what he really meant. Your vulnerability to manipulation is directly proportional to your emotional investment in outcomes. Manipulators exploit one thing above all else: your need. Your need for approval, for validation, for emotional comfort, for being liked. The moment someone identifies what you desperately want, they own you. Strategic detachment doesn't mean not caring. It means positioning your emotions behind your awareness, not in front of it. It means observing your desires without being enslaved by them. When someone tries to manipulate you, they're running a psychological program: create need, offer supply, demand submission. But if you can see the program running without getting caught in it, you're immune. Modern application. Next time someone uses guilt, urgency, or emotional leverage on you, pause. Say nothing. Just observe. Watch them work. Notice the technique. The moment you stop reacting and start analyzing, manipulation loses its power. You're no longer in the game. You're watching it from outside, the manipulator's greatest fear. Someone who simply doesn't need anything from them. Principle 2. Trust actions, never words. 545. 645. Machiavelli was obsessed with this concept. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. He understood that humans are masters of presentation, but slaves to incentives. People will say anything if the social rewards are high enough. But their actions? Actions reveal true operating systems. Here's the manipulation defense mechanism. When someone tells you who they are, be polite. When someone shows you who they are through their behavior patterns, believe that data. Absolutely, manipulators are verbal magicians. They reframe. They explain. They provide elaborate justifications for why this time is different, why context matters, and why you're misunderstanding. And if you listen to words alone, you'll be hypnotized. But Machiavelli would tell you, track behavior over time. What do they do when nobody's watching? How do they treat people who can't benefit them? What patterns emerge when you remove the narrative they provide? Modern application. Stop accepting explanations for red flag behaviors. Someone who consistently shows up late doesn't struggle with time management. They're telling you that your time has no value to them. Someone who lies about small things won't magically be honest about big ones. Pattern recognition is your psychological immune system. The manipulator counts on you believing their story. The Machiavellian trusts only the data. Principle 3. Control the frame or live in theirs. 645, 750. This is perhaps Machiavelli's most powerful lesson. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. But here's what he actually meant. The person who controls the emotional frame of an interaction controls the outcome. Every manipulation attempt is a frame game. The manipulator offers you an interpretation of reality, and if you accept it, you're operating inside their mental architecture. You're playing defense in a game where they own the field. Frame control is this: refusing to accept someone else's interpretation of who you are, what you want, or what's happening. When someone says, "You're being too sensitive," they're attempting a frame. You're the problem, not their behavior. When someone says, "If you really cared about me, you would," they're installing a frame. Love equals compliance. Modern application. When someone tries to define you negatively, telling you you're overreacting, being difficult, not understanding, do not defend. Defense accepts their frame and argues within it. Instead, reframe completely. "I notice you're uncomfortable with my boundary. That's not my problem to solve." Or simply, "That's your interpretation." The manipulator needs you to accept their reality structure. The moment you establish your own, their power evaporates. Machiavelli knew, if you're explaining yourself, you've already lost. The psychologically sovereign don't justify. They state and move forward. Machiavelli wrote something profoundly manipulator-defeating. Never attempt to win by force what can be won by deception. Wait, isn't that pro-manipulation? No, read deeper. He's telling you the person with complete psychological transparency is the easiest to control. Predictability is vulnerability. Manipulators run on information. They need to map your psychology, your triggers, your desires, your fears, your boundaries. Once they have that map, they can navigate you like a GPS. Strategic ambiguity is the art of being unpredictable in a world that demands you be readable. It's refusing to be categorized, refusing to react consistently, refusing to give manipulators the psychological data they need. This doesn't mean being dishonest. It means being selective with your inner world. It means not explaining your every motivation. It means sometimes saying no without providing 17 reasons why. Modern application. When someone asks probing questions designed to map your psychology, why do you feel that way? What makes you think that? Don't you think you're being... Recognize the data mining operation. Your response? Just how I see it. Not something I'm discussing, or my personal favorite, comfortable silence. The manipulator needs your psychological blueprint. Strategic ambiguity keeps the blueprint locked in a vault they can't access. Machiavelli understood. Mystery is power. Total transparency is weakness masquerading as virtue. Here's where Machiavelli becomes your psychological bodyguard. He observed that the powerful, when challenged, immediately deny attack and reverse victim and offender. Modern psychologists gave it an acronym, DARVO, but Machiavelli documented it in Renaissance Italy. This is the manipulator's nuclear weapon. When you confront them, they instantly become the victim of your aggression. Suddenly you're defending yourself against accusations you never made, apologizing for harm you never caused. It's psychological judo. They use your confrontation's energy to flip the entire situation. Machiavelli's advice would be brutally simple. The moment you see this pattern, disengage completely. Not because you're weak, because you're smart. Here's why. DARVO only works if you engage. It's a trap that requires your participation. The manipulator needs you to defend yourself, to explain, to prove you're not the villain they're painting you as. Your defense is their victory. Modern application. When someone responds to your boundary or confrontation by attacking your character, playing victim or reversing the offense, stop talking immediately, say nothing else. The conversation is over. They've revealed themselves, and your continued engagement is giving them power. Machiavelli knew. You cannot reason with someone who's using confusion as a weapon. Your silence is your fortress. The manipulator expects you to chase the logical conclusion. The Machiavellian walks away mid-sentence and never looks back. Here's Machiavelli's final gift to you. The lion cannot protect itself from traps, and the fox cannot defend itself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten wolves. Translation. Manipulators rely on your consistency, your goodness, your predictable moral framework. But Machiavelli understood something revolutionary. The highest morality is refusing to let immoral people exploit your morality. This is the law of mirroring. You match the psychological game being played with you. With genuine people, you're genuine. With manipulators, you become psychologically inaccessible. This isn't stooping to their level. It's refusing to unilaterally disarm in psychological warfare. Modern application. When you identify someone as consistently manipulative, you don't owe them your usual empathy, your usual patience, your usual benefit of the doubt. You shift operating systems. You become polite but unmovable, friendly but unreachable. You give nothing they can weaponize. The manipulator expects your goodness to be absolute and exploitable. The Machiavellian's goodness is selective and strategic, reserved for those who've earned it through reciprocal respect. Machiavelli's ultimate lesson? Being unmanipulable doesn't require you to become manipulative. It requires you to become discerning, to stop offering psychological access to people who've proven they'll abuse it. So here's where you are. Now, you've just learned what took Machiavelli a lifetime of political warfare to understand. You've been given the psychological source code that makes someone immune to manipulation. And now you have a choice. You can close this video and return to the default settings, the ones that leave you vulnerable to guilt trips, emotional blackmail, and psychological domination by people who learned these principles without ever talking about them. Or you can become someone different, someone who sees through the theater, someone who can't be guilted, pressured, or emotionally hijacked, someone who moves through the world with the quiet confidence of psychological sovereignty. Imagine walking into conversations knowing that no matter what manipulation technique gets deployed, guilt, urgency, false narratives, emotional flooding, none of it can touch you. Because you see it. You recognize the program running. And you simply don't execute the code. That's not becoming cold. That's becoming free. Machiavelli didn't write The Prince to create more manipulators. He wrote it to create fewer victims, to give good people the awareness they need, to stop being useful tools for bad ones. The world is full of people who will use your kindness as a weakness, your honesty as a liability, your empathy as a weapon against you. Machiavelli's gift is this: you don't have to become them to defeat them. You just have to see them clearly. So here's my challenge to you. For the next 7 days, practice strategic detachment. Trust actions over words. Control frames instead of defending within them. Watch how many relationship problems were actually manipulation attempts all along. And if this resonated with you, if you're ready to master the psychology of power and become genuinely unmanipulable, subscribe to this channel. We're building something rare here. A community of people who refuse to be psychological prey while also refusing to become predators. Comment below with one manipulation tactic you've experienced and how you're going to defend against it now. Let's learn from each other, because in the end, Machiavelli's most radical idea wasn't about power. It was about freedom, the freedom to be good. Without being weak, the freedom to be kind. Without being exploitable. The freedom to move through life untouchable, not because you've built walls, but because you've built discernment. Nobody can manipulate you anymore. Welcome to psychological sovereignty.